Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Spinistry Chat. I am your race host and host of Adventure, Kevin Lee from the Spinistry. And today's Spinistry Chat is primarily our virtual riders and racers meeting for this weekend's Shelby Winter Wonderland out of Shelby, Texas. And we'll also have a little bonus section towards the end where we talk about a route in development. Put that off to the side for now, and we're going to talk about Saturday's Winter Wonderland. First off, it is winter, and a big concern at this time of year is almost always the weather. And currently, on Tuesday afternoon, it looks like we have some pretty darn good riding weather coming our way for that part of the state. And typically, even if it ends up being a little chilly in the morning, it does warm up rather nicely. And the start times are flexible enough that if you just need to wait for the heat of the day, you can start later in the day. We are doing this event in a virus safe format. Our waves racing that we've been using for a few events now has worked out pretty darn well. We're excited to bring real gravel racing back to Texas, but we're even more excited to make sure that it's a safe place for everybody to go out there and enjoy themselves on the bicycle. And we'll go over some of those details and how that will work for the Central Texas racers that may not have made it to any of our wave start events so far. But first, here's an overview of the routes themselves. We recognize that not everyone is in tip-top shape these days. So we've gone a little bit shorter on our traditional distances for the race, but don't let that deceive you. These are some really fun routes. There's a little bit of up and down in there. It doesn't seem to reflect on the elevation gain that shows on ride with GPS, but just scouting the route on Friday, verifying the route. We've thrown a bunch of new stuff into it that we haven't been on before when we've done this area. We've kept some of our really classic stuff that people enjoy, but there's some new stuff in the mix that I think people are really going to get a kick out of. And we have basically a 33-mile route, a 41-mile route, and a 53-mile route. We do also have a 100-ish mile option, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. First, let's talk about the main routes. And I'm going to hover over the 53 miler. That's what's outlined in black presently. More than likely, this is probably what most people are going to do. And the way we do our routes, we do try to make as much common and share it amongst the other routes as possible. So the black section is the 53-mile route. Those magenta sections that you see there are where the other routes may shorten that a bit. And let's show you how the 41 miler, this is how that shortens the 53-mile route. That little green extension towards the northeast is cut out of the 41 miler, but the rest of it is shared with the 53 miler. And then the 33-mile route cuts off those two colored extensions there, but the rest of the route again is shared with the other distances as well. We will have one water table on the route that is provided. Those will be sealed water bottles at that water table as well. There are no convenience stores or other amenities along the route. So it'll be what's available at staging and then what's out on that one water table is what is available. We're going to zoom in on the detail for the 53-mile main route. Being hosted once again at Harmony Hall, and the start is the same for all of the different distances. The staging area is the same. Let's look at this from a satellite view. This is the Harmony Hall dance hall area. This main parking area is all of ours here. There are restrooms indoors. This front roof area here is a covered patio. Most likely, that's where we'll do our check-in and finish area is there. We are doing a wave start format for safety purposes. Each wave is going to have 10 or less participants in it. Those designated wave times, the earliest wave at 7:30 a.m. is only for the 100 milers. From that point on, 15-minute increments, 10 minutes or less, you can start in any of the wave times that are convenient for you for any of the other distances but 100 miles. And you can start with that group of 10 or less and ride whatever distance you choose. You can even change your mind in the middle of the ride. Maybe you were planning to do the 41 and feel a little spunky and decide to opt into the 53. You can let us know after the fact, and we'll put you in the right distance at that time. The way it's going to work is if you have a 7:30 wave, check-in will open 15 minutes prior to that. We'll check you in, assign you your number, line everybody up. We'll have pylons, cones lined up at least every 6 feet. Proper social distancing at start. Send people off. Once that 7:30 group goes off, we'll open check-in for the 8 o'clock wave. The 8 o'clock wave, once it goes off, we'll open check-in for the 8:15 wave. Please pay attention to this. If you're in the 8:30 wave, you can't check in at 7:45 for the 8 o'clock wave. You have to check in for the 8:30 wave after the 8:15 people leave. And then we'll immediately open check-in for the next group. That keeps 10 or less people at check-in, at staging throughout the morning. That way we're able to maintain our social distance and safety guideline requirements there. And so we have waves that start everywhere from 8 o'clock to our last wave starts at 10 a.m. So if you can't handle a mid-40s temperature early in the morning, maybe you want to take that 10 o'clock rollout. If you want to get done early in the day, spots are diminishing in the earlier waves. 8:45, there's still a bunch. 9:45, there's still a bunch, and 10 o'clock. So if you want to get an early start, you probably want to go ahead and sign up earlier rather than later. And again, the way we'll do this is basically what we'll do is we'll set up probably somewhere in here 10 cones spaced at least 6 feet apart, send everybody out and say go. You'll have your number at that point and go out on course. And the way the shorter distances, 53 miles and less, go, they go in what we call a clockwise fashion here. Let me go ahead and go to the map. And the 53 milers at about mile 31, that's where your water table will be. We'll look at the 41 milers. Your water table will be the same water table at about mile 19. And again, the water table will be sealed bottles of water on the table. There'll be a trash receptacle there as well. Please dispose of your trash properly. And then the 33-mile racers, that works out to about 19 miles for you as well when you hit that water table. Now we're going to throw a little bit of a monkey in the wrench. And I'm going to bring up the 100-mile route because the 100-mile route works a little bit differently. What we're going to do for the 100-milers, you're basically doing 2 laps of the same course, but you'll do it in both directions. And what we're going to have the 100-milers do on lap 1, the 100-milers are going to go counterclockwise. And that makes that water table around mile 22 on the first lap. And realistically, along the way, they'll be crossing paths with the other distance riders. So there's somewhat of a safety feature there as well. Then 100-milers will come back in, check in, and it can be a rolling check-in. We recommend that the 100-milers You can check in when you complete your lap or when you go out on your second lap, whatever you prefer. Just go to your vehicle, reload on nutrition, hydration, whatever you need to at the main staging area. Wherever we end up having the timing antenna set up, check in, go back out, and on lap 2, you'll follow the same route, but in the other direction, which is the main direction that the other riders went. That way, once the last 100-miler checks in and lets us know they're going out for their second lap, we know who's out there on course, and then we're able to sweep the route ourselves as we pick up arrows throughout the afternoon, because the 100-milers are considered self-navigated, particularly when you're going the counterclockwise direction, but the other routes will have the routes marked for them. And then after the last 100-miler goes out, then we'll start picking up those arrows. So that's the basic format there. And on the second time through, it'll be about mile 85, 84 and a half, 85 to catch that water table again. So 100-milers, it actually works out to a total of 106 miles. Your first water table is about mile 22. Then at mile 53, you'll be back by the staging area to refuel. And then at mile 84 and a half or so, 85, that's when you'll go by the water table again as well. Now, also, since we're doing these wave starts, you're not going to necessarily know who you're racing head to head with, because somebody can be starting at 8 o'clock and do the 53-miler against somebody that also starts at 9:45. What we'll do is most likely it'll be Sunday morning. Get back to Spinistry Central. We'll combine all the waves into one file for each distance, and then we'll have final rankings and standings at that point. So it'll probably behoove you when you start each race, and we'll probably make it part of the riders meeting. It's going to be a real quick, maybe 2 or 3 minute at most riders meeting before we send everyone out. Get a sense of who's going the same distance you are in your wave, but keep in mind there's people in other waves that are going that distance as well. So if you're pacing yourself just with the people in your wave, you may be somewhat handicapping yourself as well. Keep that in mind. It takes some strategy. There is definitely some benefit to some time trial effort, or maybe some benefit in teaming up with somebody in your wave to put in as fast a time as possible, working together. Something to think about there. So that's our overview of the basics of the Shelby Winter Wonderland. Routes are available to registered riders now. Already registered riders, you're getting this video link as well as the link to the routes themselves. If you register after seeing this video for the first time, the link to the routes will be in your confirmation email as well. If you do not have a dedicated navigation device, even though the course is marked for the shorter distances, we do still recommend using GPS navigation as a backup. The link to the routes itself will also give you free access to the Ride with GPS navigation app for these events. So thank you for joining us there. Now we're going to roll into part B of this, and it's kind of a byproduct of doing our verification of the routes. And I know I didn't make this nearly as clear as I should have. These routes for this weekend are fantastic. I was really pleased with what I saw when I verified them. But once I verified them on the way back, we'll zoom in here a little bit, go to a different part of the map. We'll zoom in on this a little bit. On the way, so here's our loops for Shelby down here. And I live up here. And on the way back, I wanted to check out some stuff. We currently have a Dallas to Austin route that catches a little corner here at Cameron. And I saw some interesting stuff east side of that route that I wanted to look into a little bit more closely. So I mapped an area I really wanted to see. And on the way back from verifying this route, I decided it'd be a good time to scout that. So this is actually an overlay of what I mapped out versus what I actually drove that day. And this was Friday after our 4+ inches of rain the couple days before. I really like scouting routes and verifying routes immediately after a big rain. That really tells us a lot. So the Shelby routes themselves were fantastic after the big rain. And most of this up to a certain point, and I'll show you where, was a lot better than I expected because it was one of those things, the further north we got, the wetter it was. So in Cameron itself, this brown line is what I mapped. The blue line is where I deviated from that. So I came into the route from a slightly different spot, but where you don't see any deviation, that means the route worked as expected. And realistically, except for a couple of minor deviations, from what I was able to get to, I don't see any reason to make any changes. Now here's a perfectly good example. This is why we scout. So the brown line is where I mapped it. The blue line is where I ended up driving as I was scouting. And the reason for that, when we go into it now, turn off the labels. It still looks like there's something there, but it was closed off and gated back here. And you can see it's a little woollier than we usually would prefer. And then it gets here and it's non-existent. So this was a road that showed on the maps that didn't actually go through. But this road kept going this way and we just kept the next right-hand turn. Mileage ended up being almost exactly the same and just a minor deviation. So that was one required deviation there. And that's not too bad. This was a really interesting area here. Falls on the Brazos Park, something to keep in mind for future reference. Something different to check out. Here was a slight deviation in Moreland. I do believe I probably initially routed it this way to go specifically by this convenience store that was here. When I actually drove it, this goes straight through. And there's a bunch of stuff through the main road of town. There's no reason to make this deviation. There's other stores and places to stop for food and whatever else. Here was a big detour we had to take. Here's another one that definitely shows the county road. When you look at the satellite image, it goes into tree cover, so you can't tell for sure if there's a road or not. Since the county road designation was there, I kind of assumed it was. But I got here, and it was just a field, basically, at where that tree line starts. So we had to make a slight deviation here, get on the main highway, which isn't terrible. Really good shoulder here. And then back on the route, everything's peachy, fine, and dandy. And again, we'd had over 4 inches of rain in like the previous day and a half or so. Lots of standing water, lots of running water. Creeks were high, but no flooding, no major mud issues. There were no major mud issues to be found until I got to this point here. And this particular hill was very muddy and tore up. But the truck got up there okay. But then when I got to the top of the rise here and looked down into this valley, all of this through here was just running water. So there was no way to cross the road here. So that was basically our end point for this scouting trip. I expect that we'll most likely still keep this section. Looks like it has high potential for coolness. And there's just this runoff creek here. It doesn't look like it's a flooding issue on a regular basis. It looks like it probably clears out pretty quickly. So I definitely want to pick up where this left off and scout the rest of it. The main goal was to get it up towards Mejia here. It does go by Fort Parker State Park. Mejia is the real endpoint that I have in mind that I would like to get to with this route. After here, I'm kind of wide open. I kind of have some stuff mapped to Corsicana. And it looks really interesting. I'm just not sure where we're taking it from Mejia. So I want y'all's feedback on this. I think it looks pretty cool to try to get up to Corsicana. And from there, I'm not sure do we take it back to the Metroplex? Do we try to take it maybe out towards Canton or Tyler, or, up through Terrell potentially? Some things we start running into on the other side of this Cedar Creek Reservoir, to the best of my knowledge, there's a severe lack of dirt roads out this way. Some scouting I've done out there, I haven't seen much. I think it kind of ends on the west side of the lake here. I think we can wind up this way and find some more, but we are getting outside of the stuff I know really well, but I love getting to know new stuff. But maybe that doesn't make any sense. Maybe it just makes as much sense as possible to get as much dirt from Corsicana back into Dallas or Fort Worth, or both of them. I know we can wind back towards Italy and up through May, Pearl, and Venus and all that, and there's lots of good dirt in here. I think once you start getting a little bit east of May, Pearl towards Waxahachie, we start losing dirt capability there. Definitely on the other side of 35. So things to think about. I definitely welcome your feedback on which direction to take this route. As it is now, down to Cameron, it can join our Austin to Dallas route that kind of winds up this way. And what I see it doing actually in the long run is actually being able to bisect both routes and create loops between the two, all the way between Dallas and Austin, and just have multiple distances. So you don't have to just go out for a 500-mile bicycle ride, because there's some really cool stuff out there. So anyway, just a quick little route scouting and evaluation and development tutorial. Let's go with that. We're taking it to Corsicana because I really liked the looks of this stuff when I was mapping it out. I'm looking forward to verifying it, scouting it. I'm pretty confident we can get to Corsicana, no problem. I'm just not sure where to take it from there. So your thoughts and comments are definitely appreciated along those lines. And if you stuck around for that, that's pretty cool stuff. From you guys, we appreciate it. We're looking forward to Shelby Winter Wonderland Saturday morning. And keep an eye out. We're working on some other stuff too as conditions permit. But as always, we have a tremendous focus on safety. Thanks for joining us.